But well, please welcome Dr. Corvino to the stage.
How's everyone doing today?
Great.
I'm really honored to be able to come up here and talk with you all. After hearing some of the speakers yesterday, I'm definitely privileged to be able to talk today and kind of discuss this idea of multiple resources to not only keep stay up to date, but also how technology is changing to make that process almost effortless at this point. Before I even kind of get into the actual presentation, I do want to talk about why this is important to me, kind of give you a little bit of context. You know, when I was in school, I decided that the community pharmacy track was sort of the way I was going to go. And for the pharmacists in the room, you know that one of the stigmas behind things like retail pharmacy is that it's kind of like the potential black hole of pharmacy, where if you go into there, you're never getting out again. And a lot of them will lose focus on like learning new clinical aspects, techniques. And so, you know, I heard this, and you know, I knew plenty of community pharmacists who were great, so I never really thought much about it. But then I had a few others that would kind of mention the same sort of things. And you know, one day when I was probably 2 months away from graduation, I had just somebody I was working with as an intern, a pharmacist. And they told me that, you know, really enjoy this time because this will be the smartest you'll ever be right now. and I just I couldn't believe that. Like, I spent all this time learning this information in the last 8-9 years of school, and this person who's supposed to be a mentor, his advice to me was just yeah, take that knowledge and just no need for that. I just couldn't get that. You know, one thing I've said, I've made this joke before, but that would be like if you're in surgery and you're laying there and all of a sudden you hear the surgeon get ready to do his thing, and he goes, "Oh, I just really wish I knew as much as I did when I was in med school." You wouldn't stick, you'd be out of there, right? And so I couldn't get my head around that. So I made kind of a promise to myself that I would never get to that point, and I would keep learning and find ways to make that happen even when, you know, life started. So some objectives. I do want to address the barriers and difficulties that are encountered, some of the things that people find difficult about keeping up with information, some of the excuses that you may hear. We'll talk about the traditional modern resources that have been sort of tried and true. I know you heard Dr. Brett mention social media. I don't want you to immediately be like, "Oh no, you got this millennial up here to talk about nonsense." I promise, I want to start with very tried and true type things, and we'll go into some of the more future type learning. But I do want to discuss technology's impact, how it's making continuing education somewhat easy as far as continuing the process after school. And then this is where we will explore, lastly, some of the opportunities that are coming very soon, I think, for people that are not only interested in learning and continuing education, but also providing continuing education as well on different platforms. And that's where I'll get away from more of the tried and true and kind of pontificating a little bit on what's going on. So, quick couple questions here. Which website provides a free service that emails the user abstracts of recently published clinical trials? All right, so we'll go back to that one, but remember I said free, so keep that in mind. Here's one other question. Which organization does not currently produce an original podcast on iTunes? Does not. All right. So we'll come back to that as well. Oh, I forgot. I do have one more question. Sorry. Which organization had their flash briefing removed from Amazon's Alexa due to a lack of updated content? And for those of you who don't know what a flash briefing is, I will explain. stuck on 1%.
It's old and slow.
That's okay. There we go. All right, perfect. All over the place. That's actually good. I'm glad to see that. Hopefully I won't bore you guys to death now with some of this. All right, so real quick, let's talk about some of the barriers, difficulties that people talk about whenever they're making their excuses or reasons why they have not kept up with information. Obviously, the most important aspect that we have for a lot of people is our time, right? And so this was a report that was put out on Medscape just recently, where they surveyed 20,000 physicians. They do this every year, every couple of years. But it was their compensation report, and they asked all kinds of different questions about lifestyle and how the happiness and all these things. And compensation compared salaries and just all kinds of different aspects. But one of the things that they asked was how many physicians spend 45 hours each week with patients or more. And they had it all the way up to like 65 and down to, I believe, like 10 or 20. And so they said 29% said that they spend at least 45 hours or more each week with direct patient care. That's not including everything else that's just in front of a patient. And then 60% reported spending 10 or more hours on paperwork or administration tasks, business type activities. And so, that alone is quite a bit of hours during the day. So obviously there's, it's working. That's probably pretty modest. I'm sure many of you have worked significantly longer hours than that, just being at work itself. And so a lot of times we work a long shift. The first thing when you get home after that is not, I can't wait to curl up next to a fresh copy of the New England Journal of Medicine. Maybe some of you, I don't know. Right, Dr. Word?
No thank you.
So the other thing is they also reported in the other poll that they did, they dealt with more of the lifestyle and happiness side of things. 82% of physicians reported being married or living with a spouse or significant other. And that was one thing that obviously is a valid excuse, because I know right now I haven't been able to spend much time with my wife over the last week, and if I get home tonight and I tell her that I can't take you on a date, we are going to be reading clinical trials for the rest of the night, I'll definitely be in a lot of trouble. Approximately 49% are trying to lose weight, so that's time being spent at the gym, time going to classes or working with a trainer or what have you. And then, a third of the physicians that they asked had spent 2 weeks or less on vacation. So these were people that had been working all year and only going on vacation in 2 weeks, sometimes even less. And so obviously people are very busy. So these are very valid excuses. I think, healthcare providers have a lot more, skin in the game when you try to say that you don't have time for things. That's a much more valid excuse versus some other situations out there. The other thing is cost, right? Some of these events are not cheap. Going to continuing education events like actual seminars, symposiums, probably isn't an option every single weekend. Just constantly be learning, because the cost would be crazy. Journal subscriptions, unless you are involved with the actual healthcare system that provides this for you at no charge, these journal subscriptions can get expensive as well. And so, that's something to consider. And then online platforms like UpToDate, Dynamed Plus, Access Medicine, all these, now they all have a cost associated with them unless you are fortunate enough to have your institution provide these resources for you. And that all takes a toll, though, because those are all very useful resources that are great to have, but if you have to pay for them yourself, then it's expensive quick. And the CME events are relevant to a specific specialty. So there may be like a diabetes symposium, but let's say you never see diabetes patients, then maybe you don't want to spend the time going to something like that because you don't feel like you'll get enough out of it, a return on your investment for how much you spend. Lack of opportunities for small group. If you're in practice by yourself and you don't have partners that are really wanting to sit around at a journal club after hours, some of that may be hard to get together. And then also the other excuse I hear, especially as far as the newer opportunities that I'm going to talk about later on, is I didn't grow up with this technology. I don't know how to use it. It doesn't make sense. So I don't want to use it. Also a valid excuse. I'm not saying it's not. But these are all things that kind of get in the way of us sort of using some of this technology. So the next slide, it took me a while to find because it's such an old picture. But this right here, and I want you guys to get this, is really cool. This place it used to be out there, it's called a library. And you had to go here, and I know this is true because I actually verified with Dr. Wirt yesterday. But you had to go to this place, like get in your car and drive there, and get books off the shelf and actually read them. And then they had this contraption right here, which I don't even know what this is. And so, I'm joking, I know what that is. And so, I think the big point of this is we've lost tremendous perspective for how easy things can be now. One of the analogies I like, an astrophysicist that has written several books, he said, there's more technology, more computing power in your cell phone than all of NASA when we put 2 astronauts on the moon. So if you think about that, like this device right here has more computing power than NASA had in the 60s. That's pretty crazy. And there's a reason why we've gotten away from having things like going to the library and sending them off cards to get journals sent to us, or specific articles from a journal, because it's just one of those things. We've gotten better technology and it's gotten easier, but I feel like we've lost perspective. I will say, I think that if anyone who has lived through the era of having to send off for journals, again, speaking with Dr. Wirt about this topic yesterday, anybody who's had to go through that, I'm sure when he hears someone my age saying like, oh, I can't believe I have to pull some articles, and he's probably got to drive him crazy because of how easy it is now. But I like to kind of remember that because it's important to keep that perspective, and we're in the easiest time right now to be able to gather this information, and I just want to encourage everyone to take advantage of that. And so the first thing I would say is automate the process, right? If you're having to come home from work, you're tired, you don't feel like doing extra activities, whatever, you want to make it as easy as possible to get the information. You don't want to have to go search through every single journal and try to find what is pertinent to you and then have to go look up the article and read them. So I'm going to go through some resources that I use personally that I like pretty much. Some of these you may be very familiar with, but hopefully there'll be some in here that you haven't seen. But these are definitely things that make it very easy. Drugs.com, super simple website, but you can go to that and basically sign up for free. All the ones I'm going to talk about for the next couple seconds, a couple slides are going to be all free resources. Sign up for free. You make a list of the things that you want news about. So for this particular website, I will say, like, I want new drug updates. Whenever there's a new drug that's just been FDA approved, they will send me an email to let me know. And then from there, I can go ahead and look and see if I need to research that further. When I wrote this, I said that this was May 1st, I think, when I wrote this slide. I said there was 19 new drugs that have been approved since the beginning of 2018. That has gone up significantly since then. In the last 2 months, we've had several other new drugs and some pretty big drug updates. With like the new integration strain inhibitor for HIV, the bictegravir, there's a monoclonal antibody for HIV, there's a new plaque psoriasis treatment option. There's some big, the new migraine medication that was approved last Thursday. There's lots of new drugs that are coming out, and the quicker that we are aware of these drugs, we can start researching and kind of figuring out whether we want to use them in practice, I think is definitely important. But drugs.com, very easy to use website. So this one right here, how many have ever heard of READ by QXMD? Anybody? Okay, a couple. So I'm a big fan of this app as well. This is an app that's available for iPhone and Android platforms. What you do is when you sign up, again, it's free. You make a list of all the journals, and they have most of the major journals that are available. You go through, select which journals interest you the most, and from there, they will send you updates whenever a new issue is released. And it'll have all the different abstracts in there. This is a picture taken that I took from my actual phone. It's kind of blurry, so it's hard to see, but you can select which actual journal articles, and then when you read the abstract, if it's something you think you'll need, they have the PubMed ID right there. And they'll also have things like, it'll tell you how many other research articles are now quoting that within the last couple of days. It's a pretty useful resource. Again, right to your email, or you can just check it on the app yourself manually. It'll send you an email if you haven't checked something. So let's say I subscribe to the Annals of Internal Medicine. and I don't check that app and see what kind of new materials come out, it'll send me this email, and it's like in kind of like sarcastic italics. It's like things you probably missed since you haven't checked the app in a while. And you can go in there and see what you missed, and you're like, oh shoot, I should have been checking the app. So it's really good. I use this one all the time, probably daily. I love this app, and you know, it's definitely not without issues, obviously, like anything else. But it does make it very easy to kind of sift through information very quickly and pull out the stuff that you need. So if you don't like smartphones, you are completely still team flip phone, and you don't want to use an iPhone or Android or whatever, that's okay, because there's an email option that you can do from your computer. It's called Evidence Alerts, and it is from McMaster Plus and Dynamit Plus. It used to be under British Medical Journals, I believe, but they've switched it up recently. But you can go on free, again, sign up, you pick which topics interest you the most, and then they will email you articles that they select that have been just recently released. Usually they're within the last month at the most, and they'll send you, again, like the abstracts, to let you look through them, all kinds of various articles. You know, this is a picture of my email at that time. There's one from Chest, and you know, they'll have all kinds of different topics, and whatever you select. But if like cardiology is all you ever want to get articles from, that's all you'll get. It won't just send you things that you are not interested in at all. So you have control over what comes. And then you can also pick how often you want it to send articles. So you can have it pick monthly, which monthly is kind of, come on, you can do better than that. And then weekly and nightly as well. So I prefer nightly myself. Some people go weekly, that's fine. Whatever works for you. But if you go monthly or weekly, you're going to get a huge list of these articles, and it's going to take you forever to go through them. Nightly, it's usually with 5, 6, 7 articles. It's pretty quick, and you can very quickly see if you need to pull any of the information. Medscape, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware of Medscape. Again, you can sign up for a free subscription to most of the resources on the website. They have actual individual breakdowns. If you go on the website, you can click your specialty. They have, whether you're a pharmacist, and if you're a physician, they have it broken down into, cardiology, endocrinology, what have you. Or you can subscribe to all of them. It will let you subscribe to all of them, and it'll send articles to you based on whatever's going on in that particular field. So I like Medscape a lot because they also have cases and other things. So I actually use Medscape mostly for looking at areas that I don't normally deal with, just to kind of keep sharp and keep that type of information at least somewhat relevant, so that if I ever needed to step into a slightly different role, obviously it's a little easier for me being a pharmacist to kind of switch roles versus maybe someone who's been a specialized resident physician. Then you're going to be a little bit harder to switch roles, but I do think this is really great to kind of keep track of what else is going on outside of our field as well. Fierce Pharma. Fierce Pharma deals pretty much just with industry type events. So I like this one as far as keeping track of which drug company is doing what, who they're acquiring, what kind of deals they're doing, insurance deals, what have you. It makes it easier to kind of see what's going on in the big grand scheme. They're not real big on actual therapeutic recommendations or anything like that. It's mostly just news. So if that's something that interests you or you could find helpful, then definitely check out Fierce Pharma. It's pretty good. All right, so paid prescription or subscription services rather. We have New England Journal Watch is a great one, JAMA Evidence, Access Medicine, all of these. They're excellent. They have really good information, really access to all kinds of different things, but they are paid services unless your institution provides them to you. That's excellent if they do. But if you're not, if you're in practice by yourself or whatever, then you would have to pay for these. But I would definitely suggest Journal Watch is one that I use a lot, JAMA Evidence as well. But they're really great resources, but they come with the cost, unfortunately. And so if you want those products, but let's say your institution doesn't provide them to you, because I get this question a lot from especially pharmacists obviously working in community. They're like, well, we don't have access to all these fancy journal articles and all these different access medicine, all that. And so find ways around that, right? So we had to find ways to get through that and adjust. Because I didn't have access to, once I left school, I wasn't working directly with MUSC anymore. I didn't have access to that either. So, I became a preceptor for MUSC. And with that, they allowed me to have access back to their library resources, which is honestly, such a valuable resource for me. Precepting alone by itself is one of my absolute favorite activities as a pharmacist, but the fact that MUSC gives me access to this for doing something that I would do anyway is pretty awesome, and definitely would encourage anyone who does want access to this to talk to their institution, medical university, whatever is around them, to potentially see about precepting or how they can get involved with the school in order to have access. You can also bring in students is, an opportunity to teach, because I think for a lot of us, I know for me in particular, that teaching really helps us solidify my own knowledge, right? Because you don't want to be teaching something that you're kind of unfamiliar with. So it sort of forces you to get even more familiar with it. It helps you point out holes in your knowledge where you may not have seen. And not everyone likes to teach, not everyone is comfortable with that, and that's fine. But if you feel like that's an area that that interests you, I would definitely encourage becoming a preceptor and bringing in students, even if it's been a while. All right, so now we're starting to just veer off a little bit into future type apps, websites, things. So Wiki journal clubs. So when you first hear Wiki, you automatically go, oh no, completely unreliable. Don't, Jeannie, shut up. You're right, 100%, I agree with you. Wikipedia, not a good resource still. But what Wiki Journal Club is, it's basically an organization that allows anyone to submit a review of usually a landmark trial. And from there, it has to go through 3 different processes. It has to go through deputy editors, which are students, and they're either med students, pharm students, PA, nurse practitioners, whatever. But they are students that will first review, and they go through the articles and make sure that the summaries actually match what the original article intended. They double check math as far as the number needed to treat, and all those type of statistics. And then from there, once it goes through them, then it goes to the associate editors, which are the actual clinician, practicing physicians, practicing pharmacists, nurse practitioners, PAs that are licensed, that have been in this field. And then let's say they're doing an article on the accomplished trial. It would go to a physician who's working in cardiology. And then that person would review it, see if the student missed anything, and then they would sign off on it. And then it goes to an editor-in-chief, who is a physician. They only allow physicians to do this, and they are ultimately responsible for the content's validity. And so if they work for this company, which they hire basically physicians as like private contractors for them, then when you sign off on that, it is basically saying, I, as a physician, am saying this is accurate, and this summary represents the data correctly. They don't have a lot of opinion in there. They will usually list like if it's based on a previous trial or if it's based on certain guidelines. They will address that, but there's very little, I think this trial is important because X, Y, and Z, because there's always arguments to both sides. And so it really just lays out the facts, lets you see what the authors concluded, lists some maybe limitations or strengths, and then from there allows you to kind of make the decision. So this is an example. This is an app as well. This one costs, I think, like $6, but it's a really good resource as far as just a quick, if you need to look at something as a refresher. I'm by no means saying that this is infallible, even though it has a 3-step process. Definitely, anybody can make a mistake for sure. This is not obviously peer-reviewed, other than who works for the company, but it does give you a good kind of basis, and then from there, you can always double-check with the original article. But if you are familiar with the study, you just needed to look back at a baseline characteristic or something like that, it makes a very good tool. I use it pretty frequently if I'm just trying to find some real quick information about one aspect of the trial. So education on social media. So social media is kind of a weird topic, I guess. So there's a lot of negativity around it. I know a lot of students are encouraged to get rid of social media whenever they're applying to residencies or they're moving on to their careers. I've said before in other areas that I strongly believe that if you don't have the, awareness that you shouldn't be posting pictures of yourself doing ridiculous things, like a keg stand on the weekend, you probably should not be applying to certain residencies. I would hope that someone who is just gone through that much schooling would have the sense to not post ridiculous stuff on social media for the whole world to see, but you'd be surprised. So instead of taking pictures of our food and our cats and all that stuff, is there a way to use social media to actually engage with students? Because whether we like it or not, social media is obviously tried and true as far as whether or not it's going to stay. So it may be different forms. There's been, it comes and goes as far as which platform, but that term social media isn't going anywhere, and the generation coming up is all about it. And I'm very surprised if it goes anywhere. So is there a way to take it and turn it into a positive thing for education? And that's kind of what I've been looking at for the last year. There's people that have been doing it longer than that, much longer than that. It started really on Twitter. A lot of physicians kind of came up with this term, FOMED, and it was free open access medical education. It was tweeted, when I made these slides, on Twitter, that hashtag, which is, if you're not familiar with social media, that is the hashtag how you would search for a particular topic or subject matter. And the FOMED hashtag was searched posted about 240 times that day when I searched on Twitter, and then the hashtag family medicine appeared 40,000 times on Instagram. So if you talk to students who are young 20s, mid-20s, a lot of them use Instagram. Twitter is not so much relevant with the younger population as well, Facebook either, but Instagram seems to be something that is used quite frequently by students. And so about a year ago, I started posting evidence-based medicine content on social media. I don't charge for any of it, obviously. It's completely free. Anybody can have access to it, but it's just information about really random things. So for instance, here's when the American College of Physicians Type 2 diabetes recommendations came out. I did a list of 4 summaries from the new guidelines. Talked about the ICAP trial for pericarditis. And it'll just be very random topics. Usually, now they're starting to stem around what I'm doing with the PA students, but I will post them there pretty much every day. And I did it really just kind of for fun to see what would happen. But what's weird is I'm actually starting to now interact with students pretty much on a daily basis from all around the country. So I actually had a resident email me about a month ago on Instagram. She actually messaged me on Instagram and said that I posted something on PPIs. And she said, I really appreciate you posting that last night. It saved me on rounds this morning, which I thought was pretty funny. That she had her phone in her pocket looking at Instagram. But because it's so widely used by students, and that's the next generation coming up, and we want to train them. I would highly argue for educating them in the terms that they're going to actually respond to. I know I have a hard time with traditional, like sitting in a classroom and very structured education, the way things have always been done. That was always hard for me. This is a lot more, for me personally, a lot easier to learn on this kind of a platform, kind of at my own pace, my own speed, and content that matters to me and what I'm working with. Now, obviously, this is not something that's like evidence-based as far as whether or not it's going to improve a student's knowledge. And I'm not by any means saying that the traditional education system is going away. It's clearly not. But as far as supplementing and interacting with students and kind of spreading your knowledge around, for those of you who have spent years and years obtaining this knowledge and are interested in teaching, this makes a really good platform for talking to students and really engaging with them, whether they're miles and miles away from your university. I think right now I have about 5,500 students to interact with on Instagram, and I get questions almost every day now from students from California, I get students from Canada, and these are PharmD students, MD students, PA students, nurse practitioner students. I had a person ask me about the Accomplished trial last night and how it would have, and was talking to me about a couple different baseline characteristics and things like that. And she was a practicing nurse practitioner. So there's a lot of people who are very intelligent and very qualified, even clinicians on these social media platforms. And it really allows us to branch out and get to know. I've learned a ton from people that I've met on Instagram through these type of things. I've been on podcasts where I've been invited because of social media and gotten to talk with different pharmacists from around the country, different physicians, and it's really been great. I met a PA that's at Emory, and I've worked on a couple of projects with him now for students and things, and it's been great. And I know this is definitely not for everybody. I'm not by any means saying everyone needs to open an Instagram account. I'm just trying to kind of put it out there because I do think that this is where things are kind of headed, and again, not to take the place of anything, but just to sort of add benefit and add value to what's already being taught in the education system. So here's just a couple examples. Paige, the PA, the guy I was talking about from Emory, he did a live video, because you can record up to an hour live. He did a live video on sutures, and so he had 6,400. He had just posted this probably, I want to say like an hour when I took this picture, and he had already had almost 7,000 people watching it. And ID stewardship, this is an ID pharmacist down in Florida. He has 20,000 students that he interacts with, and he helps people study for the BCPS and other board certification exams. Very, very knowledgeable person. The ortho PA is another one. He posts a lot of pictures dealing with x-rays or scans. Obviously removes all the patient information, but we'll put that on there and explain like what he's looking at and different things to help study. He'll say if you're on these rotations, these are the things you need to be studying. Here's extra resources you can use to make your rotation more beneficial for you, things like that. And I've just recently started using Snapchat even, which I personally would never use Snapchat myself, as far as just not my thing. But, for students, I know that is the next big kind of wave coming, and I've talked to pretty much everyone in my PA class all uses Snapchat. And so I started using Snapchat for them, so I would post questions and let them answer them. They can't see the answer until they click that, or it says click to see the answer. You click your thumb on that, and then it goes over and highlights the answer. So I started using it for them, and then I started putting them out to everybody. There's days where I'll get 100 new students that'll subscribe to this in a single day. So it definitely has potential to grow into something very, very, very cool. And you can also attach it to, if I talk about a trial with Snapchat, I'll do that sometimes as well. I'll just kind of copy what I put on Instagram. I can actually link it to the original resource, like New England Journal of Medicine, and let them go and pull the study themselves so they can actually do legitimate research. So obviously a post should never be taken at face value, right? And I would never tell a student to, just because I posted something, to look at that and say, yep, 100% accurate. I always put on there that this is just my interpretation of it. I always encourage, if I ever do a video or a podcast or anything, we always post the references or where we got the information from. I always post where to look to get further information, and encourage students and other clinicians to do that. Again, I don't charge anything for this at all. For me, this just helps. This is my way of staying current with information because I've gotten to know a lot of these people that follow me, and so for me, it's almost like I feel like I'm letting them down if I don't post. And so it keeps me in this kind of perpetual loop of posting information and looking up information myself, and it's helped me out tremendously personally because it's been almost easy to keep up with information because I like doing this so much that it's been a great tool for me. Again, I know it's not for everybody. I'm just kind of presenting it for what it is, and you can make your own interpretation of it. I use the post to kind of spark interest. Again, I'm hoping, my goal is not to for them to just say, oh, well, he told us this, so that's it. My goal is to spark the interest so that they then go and look up the article. Anytime I'm talking to students on there, especially if I'm doing anything live or on the podcast, then I will always reference the journals and talk about the importance of actually pulling the information. I never let that kind of slip by. And then it's one of those things that I always keep it professional. I don't ever, I'll post some things, jokingly or whatever, but it's never anything inappropriate or anything like that. And so I would always encourage students, especially if you see something that's not appropriate, whether it's evidence-based medicine or not, obviously stay away from it. It's not something you need to be involved with. But the information that's out there, there's a lot of clinicians. There was a ophthalmologist that was doing a live recording of a surgery where all the patient, you couldn't see anything on the patient, but they were doing, showing some of the procedure and things like that to get people interested in the Institute's ophthalmology program. Now, I don't know all the legal implications of that. I don't do things like that, but I'm assuming he's worked all that out. But it was still pretty interesting, and it kept my attention for like a solid 15 minutes of watching that. And I'm so not an ophthalmologist, but it was really interesting, and just for me personally, that's how I like to learn, so it kept my attention. And then obviously, you never ever understand any circumstances post anything with patients. Anything that has their ID, like HIPAA is obviously still a thing on Instagram, and so, or any other social media, so I never post anything to do whatsoever with patients. I usually don't even post anything with actual patient content anyways. There's some that will post things on there and just make it confidential, but I don't even take that risk. But definitely have to be aware of that. All right, so the ultimate time saver. This is something that I've actually gotten probably the most feedback on of anything that I've done so far with social media or any of this type of thing, and that's podcasts. Podcast, I don't know about you all, but who in here listens to podcasts? Anyone? And it could be anything, it doesn't have to be pharmacy related. So for me, like if I have to drive 30 minutes to work, it helps me tremendously to use that time to possibly learn something, and instead of just listening to music and wasting the time. I don't do it every day, but there's a lot of days where I'll be able to get through 30 minutes, and then on the way back, the other 30 minutes of an hour podcast, where I got to learn something without even taking up any of my time at home or at work. And so me and one of my former students, who's now just recently graduated, we started a podcast a few months ago. It got popular very quickly, and when I use popular loosely, I mean it's not anything big by any stretch of the imagination, but it got more popular than I thought. So not only was it on iTunes, but now Spotify, iHeartRadio's picked it up, and it's on SoundCloud and Google Play and all those. And what we do for our podcast is we usually bring in either an expert to talk about a certain topic. Like we just had a pharmacist on from Kansas who is a critical care specialist in Kansas, and walked us through some of the sepsis criteria and looked at some things that he kind of sees in his day-to-day work. We've had a critical care flight nurse on the show. We've had PAs from various backgrounds, but we try to do like a patient case, and then we'll walk through and it's a fake case, obviously, something we just make up, but and it revolves around landmark trials or whatever topics that we're trying to discuss. And so we'll go through and list all of these different changes in therapy, things like that, and explain them with the references and what trials we're using to back that evidence up, and then say, please go research this on your own, let us know about your opinions and how you would differ, how you would change things up, and then we'll get emails with suggestions and things. And it's been great. Like this has been probably one of the most fun things I've done since becoming a pharmacist. And there's a ton of podcasts out there. Mine's very, very small. These are organizations that have podcasts currently. So New England Journal of Medicine, where they review the studies and things like that that are published that week. I think we can agree, right, that's New England Journal of Medicine is a pretty reliable source. And so I'm not saying that we just need to use something like my podcast by any means, because mine's very, very small compared to these guys. But it's something that if you are in the car, you want something to enhance your learning, your the time management, if you don't want to do it when you get home, I would definitely suggest some of these podcasts because they will go through the different reviews and things like that, the articles that were released. I'm a very big fan of podcasts, and it's grown on me over the last 6 months or so. Another quick audience poll. Who has an Amazon Alexa in their house? Anyone? Oh, cool, it's more than I thought. Perfect. So if you're not familiar with Alexa, Alexa is the coolest thing ever invented. And I'm just kidding, probably not, but it is very, very interesting. I use Alexa quite often. I have a few of them in different rooms and things like that. They control my lights and all kinds of random stuff. But one of the aspects that I like so much about Alexa is this thing called a flash briefing. What a flash briefing is you basically subscribe to a certain area of news. So it could be the weather, it could be CNN or Fox News or whatever. It could be financial information if you're in the stock market or whatever. But there's what's starting to grow on there now, it's still very, very young, is this idea of medicine and education on Alexa. And so what a flash briefing is when you subscribe, you say, Alexa, what's in the news every morning, and you'll hear a person's voice come on and they will discuss a clinical trial or whatever that is that they actually wanted to discuss that day. And from there you can obviously use the information or just say next and it'll go to whatever else you've subscribed to. They're becoming a lot bigger. When I first started looking at this, probably 9 months ago or so, it was very, very small. There was hardly anybody who searched medicine, hardly anybody using it. It's grown every month. More and more people go on there and create their own. Amazon is good because they greatly encourage people who want to develop these, they call them skills instead of apps, but these skills that have to do with education, and you can, once you develop them, you can put them for free on their platform once Amazon approves it, and that's a growing resource. I've had several residents message me on this in particular because they say they listen to my flash briefing in the morning when they're like brushing their teeth, and then they will go on about their day. They're usually about 3 to 5 minutes, very short, and for me personally, I will discuss like some new drug or a new trial that came out, and I usually get the information from one of my other apps that sends it to my email list or something like that. I'll read through it. Once I know the information myself, I'll record a quick something, put it on Amazon, and then they can pull it from there. So I'll put this on here because I put this idea out there on LinkedIn. And I was I had made this video that I advertised on Instagram where I basically filmed myself in front of a green screen and had myself come out of like a hologram out of an Alexa. It looked awesome. I was super pumped about it. And so I put it on there more for that because I thought it looked cool. But I was describing what a flash briefing was and how you can use it. And the second I put it on LinkedIn and said, hey, who thinks that this is a potential resource for education in the future? I have a whole bunch of physicians, and that's where all my professional contacts will be on LinkedIn. I posted on there, and within like 20 seconds, someone was like, in all caps, Alexa pulls from Wikipedia, so it's not evidence-based. It's like, holy cow, like, geez, I'm just asking a question. I wasn't trying to tell you have to use it. And the thing that was interesting about that is it's not true. I mean, it's true for if you ask Alexa a random question. But when I say flash briefing, it's my voice. Like, it's not. I have zero stock in Wikipedia, and it's a recording. It's an MP3 or an MP4 that I've uploaded to Amazon that they're pulling, and it's my voice, and I'm the one talking about the information. It has nothing to do with Wikipedia or anything. But I got several people that said that about Wikipedia for some reason, and it was just interesting to me that people who have never even tried it or given it a chance had an opinion about how terrible it was. I didn't really understand that, but that's what it was, and I'm not going to try to debate with them and prove them otherwise. It's obviously not for them. But I would encourage you to if you have an Alexa or if you're interested in it, give it a chance and kind of see what you think. If it's not for you, great, but know that it's available and it's out there. The other thing that's coming out that I'm working on one of these currently is different quiz games, things like that to help students. So I'm working on one for like landmark trials. Again, these are all free. They can just download them on their app. And so from the one I'm working on, you'll basically say, for instance, what's atorvastatin, what trial compared atorvastatin 10 versus atorvastatin 80 for secondary prevention, the TNT trial, or which compared benazepril and HCTZ versus benazepril and amlodipine, the Accomplish trial. And they actually answer it with their voice, and then Alexa will, from there, tell them whether or not it's the right answer. And I'm still working on mine, so it's not published or anything like that, but so right now my Alexa, just for fun, well, if you get it wrong, we'll just answer like, wow, you're not very good at this, are you? And things like that. I did that mostly just to make my wife laugh, but I'm changing it back to try again. Not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. But there's definitely some big time movement on Alexa. I think that Alexa is tiny, tiny, tiny. I'm by no means saying that everyone has an Alexa or everyone should have an Alexa, but I do think that in 3 or 4 years, and I'm saying this out loud in front of everyone so that hopefully I'll be historically correct on this, I think it will be in the majority of our homes and cars and things like that. But we will see. Anyone who is kind of an entrepreneurial background or anything like that, I would encourage you to at least consider trying Alexa, because right now, like I said, this is where everybody is sort of trying it out, forgetting about it, deciding they don't like it, deciding it's too new, but there's not very many people using it. Even the ones that have tried to use it, they will post things, and it's hard, it's hard, it takes time, it takes effort, and they'll post things and they'll have not that many people download or review it, and so they just stop. New England Journal of Medicine actually had theirs removed because they weren't updating their content fast enough. They were focusing more on their podcasts and things like that, which is great. But I really believe that Alexa is good because of how quickly it saves time. And I know for me too, and other people that use it, mine orders my toothpaste for me. If I say, Alexa, I need toothpaste, the next day it shows up at my house from Amazon. So a lot of people are starting to use this thing for the convenience factor, and if you can learn something real quickly while you're brushing your teeth in 3 to 5 minutes, I would say that's pretty convenient. And there's also video flash briefings now, so if you have an Alexa show that has an actual screen on it, you can get video content as well. And so I'll post images of charts or whatever I'm trying to use for visual aids on there. So I posted this just to show you, give you an example for those of you who maybe are like, oh, it's kind of interesting, I may try to do my own. If you search the word medicine under average customer rating, I think this is still the case. This is me, I'm number 2. And I don't put that on there to be braggadocious or anything like that. I think this is the most ridiculous thing ever, that if you search the word medicine and you search pharmacy on number 1, that's so absurd. Like the fact that New England Journal of Medicine and those big organizations, there's people that, if they made a flash briefing, there's people in this room that if they made a flash briefing, I personally would listen to it every single day. That sharing of information, that kind of building up the education and medical community, I think is really important. And it's something that I think if you have any inclination towards this type of thing, take a look at it. And again, like I said, it helps you too because you're learning, you're constantly having to update it, and you never know what kind of opportunity will come from this. I had 2 students apply yesterday to the school that I teach at for PA school. They applied to PA school at that school because they follow me on Instagram and wanted to come do pharmacology with me. And I've been doing it for a very short time. And I think that I don't advertise about the school on there. I haven't listed that I work there, but I don't ever advertise and say come to the school. And they've messaged me and said I'm applying at PA school. We love Charleston. What's the application? So I'll send them over to the admissions person. But it's something that students see the value, see this information provide. If like I said, there's some people that if they posted a flash briefing, a podcast, whatever it may be, I would listen to every bit of it, just for my own learning, because they have that much knowledge. I would spend as much time as I could with them. And if I can't physically go to them, listening to it in my car would be fantastic. So, food for thought. So again, not everyone learns the same way. I'm aware of that. If you are a very traditional, you like a classroom setting, by all means, continue to that. That's not going away anywhere. I'm not saying that schools are changing how medicine is taught or anything like that, but I'm just presenting this information as a potential outcome to the way things could start evolving and being used as adjuncts, if you will, to the regular learning process. And it also really does build this sort of network of healthcare professionals. And we always encourage students rather to network with clinicians, get your name out there. And yet we think that the only way to do that is like at a conference or something like that. I've met more people through social media who are practicing clinicians and are very intelligent people that I've learned a ton from many more on social media than I ever have at conferences and things like that. So it's definitely an interesting thing to consider. I'm by no means saying this is for everyone, and I want you guys just kind of see the information, think about it for a little bit, and then make your decision from there. But technology is definitely changing. I know we're starting to deal with virtual reality at CSU, the PA program, where you can actually pull organs out of the body and deal with them in 3D space. And there's a lot of very cool things coming. It's going to make education very enhanced, if you will. So we didn't really go over the answers to these necessarily unless you were taking close attention to the slides. But the one that's free, again, remember, that's the QXMD. The other ones you have to, the Journal Watch and the JAMA Evidence you have to pay for. And Wiki Journal doesn't actually email you anything. You would have to go on there and search for a particular trial if you were interested in that. So I gave you the answer already, but we'll try the next one because I think we went over that more. The organization does not currently produce an original podcast on iTunes. Do you remember that from the slide?
Yep.
Let's see. Yeah, family medicine is the one that does not currently. All the other ones do. They're all pretty good. They all have different speakers on there. But if podcast is kind of something you're interested in, I would definitely encourage you to give those a shot. What's 30 minutes? Every time. You can always never listen to it again. Tell me I'm crazy. So which organization had their flash briefing removed from Alexa? Yes, New England Journal. Come on, New England Journal of Medicine. So with that, does anybody have any questions I can answer or anything that you want to add or comment on? Yes, ma'am.
Just a comment for people in the room. If you're a family doc and you're part of the AAFP, they do have a podcast for the American Family Physician Journal that you get.
Is it on their website?
I had to find it via one of the residents I teach on iTunes, so I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Okay, so there is one on iTunes apparently. They just need to increase their search engine optimization apparently. But that's good to know. Thank you for saying that. Anything on Echo? So yeah, when I said the flash briefing, the Echo is what I'm talking about. The Echo, the Spot, the Show, all those devices all will play your flash briefing if you join the flash briefing from them. So yes, you can get the flash briefing from any of the devices. Sorry, Google. So as of right now, Google does not allow, unless they've changed it just recently, because I typically check it every month, Google does not allow anyone to make like flash briefing type content for the Google Home. So Google Home is like is Google's adversary to Alexa, and right now you can't update information like you can with the Alexa. So that's why I didn't mention that one. Any ways to evaluate the quality of research presented on various social media platforms, as you have to go to resource for answering clinical questions. I definitely, if you're answering clinical questions in a true patient setting, I would say for liability reasons, 100%, you should probably go to a true resource instead of this at this point in time. I think that as far as evaluating the quality of research, I think that's kind of still trying to be worked out and figuring out how you can kind of present. I think depending on the platform, right? So if it's New England Journal of Medicine presenting some information, I would feel a lot more comfortable looking at that than I would some random person. Now, if I am familiar with the person's information and I've sort of over time realized that they are presenting good data, they're backing up, they're citing, they're doing all this. I still personally would probably still look at it, but I would listen to them a little bit more closely. And then, I just think that it's going to take time because very few people think, use this as a valid option right now. Do you have patients trying to ask questions on social media? I personally don't. So everything that I put on social media is not anything that's for patients. It's all meant for someone who's either a student or a practicing pharmacist, physician, PA. It's all evidence-based medicine, more therapeutic type things. It's stuff that a patient would go over a patient's head. So no, I don't personally answer questions on social media. There are people that will do that, but for me, that just gets too much into the liability realm that I'm on so many different things right now. I don't need to worry about that on top of it, and so it's easier for me to give summaries of things to actual people that work in medicine instead of patients. So, anything else at all? All right, thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
Seriously, I appreciate it.